Welcome back to Connections. We have the pleasure of continuing our conversation about volunteer engagement with both Reed Dewey, Principal of Volunteer Frontier, and Lily Fisher, Director of Community Engagement of Iona Senior Services. It's great to have you both on together.
Thank you.
So I think this is pretty exciting. We have the report author and we have the organization featured in the report. So I guess we'll get to the bottom of this pretty quickly, huh? Reed, I guess the first question is for you. Talk a little bit about the common themes of the report. We can sort of set the stage.
Yeah, sure. I think besides the part I talked before,
Yes.
which is seeing the volunteer throughout the whole organization, not surprisingly, the issue of really investing in volunteer orientation. And it was different than how I had often thought of it, and that is that really helping volunteers to emotionally connect with the organization, and making sure they really understand it in its breadth. There are some organizations that what they said, you know what, before we go through any volunteer training, we want people to really understand the organization.
And Lily, I know you guys have been engaging volunteers for such a long time that the word is out and they come rolling in. Talk about some of the earlier strategies, I guess, for engaging volunteers. Where would you start to get the word out?
So I think one of the most important things is within the community. So part of that community could be the community of that organisation, whether it's donors or people who've received the services. And then on a practical sense, I use Greater DC Cares, and I find that as a online tool for recruitment of volunteers excellent, especially for special events.
They do a fantastic job.
Absolutely. Volunteermatch.com is also a tool that can be utilised, and I find that is helpful. So I think it's a mixture of having a presence that is a physical presence, and then the other part is utilising really some of these resources that are now mainstream for volunteer recruitment.
I need to interrupt here because the website, when you go to Iona Iona Services, you really can see how you could fit in to the organization. Very specific kinds of opportunities as well. And I think that's often missing with many nonprofits. So you're tempted to get in there and say, I want to find out more.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing is we all are potential volunteers. So what do we want to hear to help make our decisions? And most of us, especially in this day and age, we're going to be making that decision from one side of the computer.
Sure.
So if we can do a little web search, like you said, and have it that on an organisation's website, that some of the job descriptions, some of the outcomes of what volunteering does for the organisation, if those are present, it allows the potential volunteer to then in private start mulling over, is this the right place for me?
Got it. So you've done the good work on the front end and you've gotten the volunteers to come to the organization. Two questions. One, what keeps them coming back? And then how do you engage, or how have you seen organizations engage the business and corporate community where they really want to know the return on their investment of time? So what keeps them coming back, the average volunteer?
I think volunteers want to have that their time is well spent.
Yes.
So they want to, if they're booked on a certain day, between a certain time, that they want to come and they know that their time is well spent.
Got it.
And that the organisation itself is respecting them. So those are really critical keys.
Got it.
And then the other part is for volunteers is that the organisation has to be themselves transparent. So it means that volunteers are like us. We are going to see flaws as any volunteer would. So the non-profit has to be prepared, and in some ways I think this helps organisations bring in the community, but also bring in more accountability.
Sure.
You know, in the issue, what I saw when I was talking with Lily is ownership is so important. Is that Iona helps people to be involved and help them feel that and have an own part of what they're doing, whether it's direct service, whether it's involved in a with the development department as a leader volunteer. there's this sense that they not only own their position and what they're doing, but they own they're part of the organization, that they're part of the team.
Right.
And if there's any challenge we've seen, in the research and in the report from other organizations, not the ones that we featured, which are the leaders, is that many times there's that separation. We've got to help staff and volunteers to work as a team.
Right. And we know volunteers can become donors down the road, and they can become board members. What tips or strategies would you give for engaging corporate leaders, folks in the business community, to volunteer? How would you make the case? What does that volunteerism do for them at their workplace or otherwise?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity for the business community, and certainly for nonprofits, is think in terms of partnerships, not necessarily even in terms of volunteering. Volunteering is one entry point and a way to get involved, but companies can really do so much when they think about the skills and their employees, what they can contribute, and to look and find a nonprofit where they could really make a difference as opposed to spreading themselves too thin. How about you?
And I find a lot of times the corporate sector, oftentimes their volunteer engagement processes aren't necessarily owned by a specialist. Okay. It may be someone who it's part of their daily routine, or it could be just popped on them once a year. So one of the things that I find my role is to help that representative to actually dig deeper into the potential of what that community engagement with us could be.
Okay.
So oftentimes I am helping them look at this being more than just, oh, let's send 10 people to volunteer. Okay. I try to turn it into a fiscal relationship. I try to have it that what we're doing is allowing them to see that this is a deep relationship. More,
Yeah.
And have you found that people appreciate getting credit, if you would, for what they've done? Seeing their name in a newsletter, on a website, a compilation of what they accomplished? Is that something that helps a volunteer to come back again, or to show off to their peers and family members?
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
And some of the research shows that what especially people who are older want is they want to see that what they did made a difference.
Sure.
That's more important than almost anything else. But the being acknowledged is certainly important.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I find that in this area, people are very busy. Different than other communities where it's a smaller pool of people. So there are folk who are coming to our organisation from Upper Marlborough.
Sure.
There are folk who are coming from deep in Virginia, and they are wanting, as you just said then, Reed, they're wanting to have it that the time that they volunteer with us is the most effective. They honestly don't have a lot of spare time then to come to a volunteer appreciation event. So it's the calibre of how each event is organised that then keeps them coming back year after year or week after week.
That's great. In our last few seconds, I'd love to get what's next from each of you. So, Reed, what's next from your perspective?
Well, for me, my passion is all around helping nonprofits and government around the engagement piece and helping them to assess effectively how they could better leverage volunteers in ways to really make a difference for the community.
Sure.
That's what it's about. So I continue doing this work and I love it.
That's awesome, and we appreciate your work and the partnership. Lily, what's next for you and Iona?
So Iona's taking a very bold step.
Wow.
We are working with local seniors to assist them to become community advocates.
Great.
And in May, we're hosting with AARP the first Aging in Community Advocacy Forum, which then will be followed up monthly with community meetings that allow local seniors to learn the tools, the 101s of how to become a community activist, and then how to form partnerships with other seniors and organisations. So as Iona recognises, it allows us to then be supported by people with their own agenda.
That's fantastic. I'm glad we asked. That's a big deal. We're looking forward to supporting you in that work as well.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you both for being on the show. I think this has been very helpful, and I heard all of the tips and strategies coming out during the course of the segments. So hopefully our viewers will take advantage of some of those, and we'll share your contact information so that folks are aware of your organizations and the great work you're doing.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. One of the keys to obtaining and nurturing dedicated volunteers is to recognize and reward genuine sincerity and commitment. For more information about volunteer engagement, contact the Center for Nonprofit Advancement today. Thank you for joining us. Remember to tune in again next week. You can also view Connections and other programs that air on DCTV online. DCTV has launched its video on demand capability, allowing our viewers with high-speed internet access to view shows produced by DCTV. To view shows, visit vimeo.com/DCTV online/channels. Connections is a partnership between DCTV and the Center for Nonprofit Advancement, empowering communities by strengthening nonprofits.